Cubase template part 3. Now we're doing keyboards, harps, and orchestral percussion. I'm really just gonna kind of jump right in here. Keyboards. Actually, I use this quite a bit for a keyboard. I've played it before, but it's just a It's a very nice, well-balanced keyboard. And I found that if I want to So if you're wondering what I just did, this little button makes this reverb send either pre or post fader. So it defaults to this, meaning that the volume of the piano and the volume of the send going to the reverb follow the fader. If you make it pre-fader, it means this is always sending the same amount of reverb no matter what. And this is only controlling the volume of the actual piano. So when it's down to negative infinity, basically it means all you're hearing is the reverb. And that's really nice if you're trying to move instruments maybe further back in the mix, like a piano, for example. Maybe it's going to be a little bit to the left and behind the orchestra because it's not a solo sort of piano thing. You can use that pre-fader trick and pull the original volume of the piano down. The reverb stays the same and it makes it sound like it's further back. So that's something that I'll do if I want it to... So without any reverb. And if I wanted it to sound more like it was and with the orchestra, that has more of a behind the orchestra kind of feel to it. But usually, I just have it kind of around here somewhere so that it has a good sound and a little bit of reverb. So I've mentioned this before, but this is kind of my sketching track and I use it a lot just for sussing out ideas. A really neat thing that I forgot to show before, this condition fader, or slider I guess I should say, does a really good job, and I have to let go to get it to update. But basically it goes from this oh yeah. So if you're thinking any sort of, you know, all kinds of great stuff. I actually used this piano in, what was it? Until Dawn. There's a therapist thing and a Bach piece that I performed live on my keyboard with that piano sound, and then basically gave supermassive, I think 3 different versions, like completely messed up and then pulled back a little bit. I think they ended up using maybe the second one, but it sounds like this really old, crazy, out of tune piano. It's very, very effective. So I go to that piano a lot, but I have some others. And at the top of my list really is this is the Spitfire Hans Zimmer piano. And something worth mentioning, I love the mics that Spitfire gives for choices. And this is all from Air Studios, so it just really sounds amazing. But I have faders on my keyboard, and I'm wiggling the faders right now. And you can see that they control these mic positions. So usually I'm not using the gallery. It's these 3. So I can, in real time, and even more importantly, via MIDI, which means it's recallable, pick the kind of piano mix that I want. Now usually I'm defaulting to this. you can hear it's just a really pure, natural kind of sound. But if I wanted to do this mic instead, that's real nice for mid-range, and then you can get the really sort of far away kind of. And of course, a lot of times you might want to have a little bit of everything so that you just have a. And as a general rule, that's really how I roll with all of the Spitfire stuff. I've got those 3 mics set up, and they always default to my 3 faders. Sometimes I think, like with strings and things, maybe I have it on the 2nd and 3rd fader are always up, and I can pull up the close mic if I want to. But the great thing about this is everything's recallable and controllable via MIDI. So whatever my basic mix is on my strings or my brass or my percussion or my pianos, I can easily modify it, and I just have to make sure to record that MIDI information on those mic levels, and then Cubase will play it back and kick it into VE Pro, and it adjusts it automatically. And if I don't do anything with it, I know I've got a default that is kind of there all the time. These are just really nice. The felt piano, the Grandeur, the A200, just alternative pianos that I like to try out. And I have the Orchestral Tools, not the newest Orchestral Tools harp, but the one that came with their very first product. I do have that, and it's got some really nice features in it, and somehow it fell by the wayside. The Spitfire, that's the close mic, and then your furthest away, so it's kind of nice. Like I could do furthest away and then close mic at 50%. So it's nice really having control over how far away these instruments are. And I do this for all of the orchestral percussion as well as anything Spitfire, Orchestral Tools. I do not do it for samples, and we can actually get into that now. So look at that, we're already on the second half of this little walkthrough. So I've got Spitfire percussion, and I really, really love especially their mallets. And I have to be honest, the timpani and the drums, the metal and the wood, it's hard to quantify. Being a percussionist, maybe, I'm a little pickier, but the room in air, I've never recorded percussion in air. I've only done strings, brass, and woodwinds, and maybe some, no, not even any drums. So all the drums, when I record in air, I'm usually recording them here myself, and if it's timpani or big bass drums, I might use some MIDI. There's something about air, and I'm sure it sounds amazing when other people use it, but for me, when I'm using these samples, there's just too much room in the samples for the drums, for the timpani and the snare drums and things like that. I love the way the mallets and everything sound, and I just can't get them to really sit in the mix the way I want. They kind of get buried behind everything else. So that's why I have the CinePerc percussion. I use the drums from CinePerc, meaning any snare drums, cymbals, gongs, basically drums and metal from CinePerc, I guess it's called. And then all the mallets I use Spitfire. But I still have them in the template because I like the idea of maybe being able to choose. And let's see, maybe I can. There's the close mic. That's the medium mic. And that's the furthest. So let's just put up like 50% close, 75% medium, and 100% further away. And let's put this down here. Oh, apologies, I just moved it to the other screen. Look, it's like magic. I think part of it might be you're getting that wonderful slap on the timpani, but I don't necessarily need that snap. Slap, I should say. I'm looking for the sort of punchy, and it might be distorting a little bit, I apologize. I'm not properly gain staging the timpani examples, but hopefully overall you can hear the difference. The Spitfire has a lot more hall, and the CineSamples, CinePerc has a lot more meat to it, and this is kind of the way I think about timpani when I hear it in like Williams scores, for example. I love the way he uses timpani, and it's not just chugging along with all the brass. It's got its solo parts, and it really sits well in the mix. It's actually very upfront if you start listening to it and paying attention. That's kind of how I like to have my timpani sounding. And the Spitfire, I think, might be more towards the classical side of things, where you hear it in the back of the orchestra, the way I was doing the piano. And everyone loves different things, so more power to everyone. That's why I have both sets of libraries. Let's hear the close mics on these. Very close. Furthest away. So what happens if I pull in the close mic? So there's a little bit of flamming going on there, and I've never really understood why it does that. Let's pull in the medium mic. That sounds better. So again, not a terrible sound by any means. I just prefer, and I'm just totally flying by the seat of my pants here. Where are these? That's the straight up stereo balance mix from CineSamples. And I think the Sony Hall obviously has a different aesthetic than Air does, but it's just that punchier kind of sound. And even the ring on the Hall is a lot shorter. It's probably 2.5 seconds on Spitfire, and you're looking at probably half that for CineSamples. So that's the main reason that I have CineSamples for my drums and Spitfire for kind of my mallets and things. And there's something to be said. I appreciate how Spitfire, where are we here? Okay, high drums. And this is a great little interface. It's very cool. It's just, it's more than I need, because I can never really remember what goes where, and I'm kind of hunting. I think that's maybe the rototoms. I'd have to basically open the interface and look at the mapping and figure everything out, and I hate to sound like I'm 90 years old, but I just like the idea of being able to go to, I want to hear high snare drums, or not. Let's just say I want to hear low snare drums, and I want to investigate that while we're all sitting here together. Those are the C and D keys spread across octaves on the keyboard, and I know the rolls are on B. For me, it's a more logical layout, and that's really all it comes down to. It just works better for me, the way Cinesamples has it mapped. Now, with that being said, I think the mallets are some of the best I've ever heard. And again, it's probably, Spitfire's amazing, they do a fantastic job, but Air Studios is just... And to be able to take that and change it to... Really, really nice having control. I feel like I'm scoring a comedy now. There's something about the hall at Air and the way it works with the percussion that's just really, really nice. How can you argue with that? So this one was a little shorter this time, and honestly, I don't really have a problem with that because next time we're doing strings, and that's gonna take a decent amount of time. By the way, what percussion libraries do you have that I didn't cover, since I only covered 2, that you really like using? Same thing with the brass and the woodwinds. Please share your favorites in the comments. Let me know, because I'm always looking for new stuff. What's that? Wait, I think I hear something.